Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's episode, my guest is Pete Evans. He's over in Great Britain. We've been in contact, we think similarly, and we spend some time today to help business owners talk about, or at least understand, the importance of practice in sales and the idea of role plays. But the bigger picture is athletes practice. They expect to be coached. They expect these things to happen. And in our country and in Great Britain to a large extent, that doesn't carry over to the corporate world. There's a mindset that from a business owner, entrepreneur, CEOs, that the salespeople should have their shit together, and that this practice thing isn't ingrained in the culture. And we talk about why that's a mistake and how that needs to be changed. And it doesn't have to be this huge endeavor. It can be done in a very simple way. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another fun and impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. So, Pete, I appreciate you taking some time out of your afternoon, my morning, to jump on the podcast and have a conversation.
Yeah, really looking forward to talking to you this afternoon, Walter, and your morning. So I'm coming towards the end of my day, and you're just starting.
Yeah, mine's in the middle of the morning, and I've already put out a few fires. So,
Excellent.
so let's kind of jump in. You and I are in a similar space. I think we approach things in a similar way. We're both objective management group partners, and you're on one side of the pond, I'm on the other, as people say. I want to think about this as a conversation as you, as the CEO of your business, the entrepreneur running the business.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of talk about what that looks like towards the end. Is that, all right. All right. So I think I like to start off with, like, what's the book or the gift that you give business owners on your customers, or just share with other folks on a consistent basis? Is there one of those that you find yourself doing on a regular basis?
Yeah. I think the book from a sales perspective, that I'm either always recommending or sharing, and this is a topic that's really probably close to your heart as well. It is Fanatical Prospecting. Yeah, I think that's I think it's a great book. I think he strips away a lot of the mystique, and I think it's really interesting is that when you look at sales, and I'm sure you experience this in the US, lots of salespeople don't want to prospect, and I think he really demystifies that. And I think it's like anything in life. If you really want something, you've got to pay the price, and you've got to do the grunt work. And I think the message in his book talk about the consistency of the activity, blocking out the golden hour. But he talks about the fact that salespeople will find excuses not to prospect,
and they're pretty creative.
They are pretty creative. They'd rather tick boxes in their CRM, or spend time around the water cooler, or sending emails. They'd rather spend time on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. All those things that prevent them from picking the phone up and actually having a conversation. So I think for any sort of CEO listening to this, or head of sales, a challenge around creating revenue or lead generation, it's a great place to get started. The thing I love about this book is that Jeb is actually doing it himself. He's walking the talk.
Well, there's a few guys that do that, I think, right? Jeb Blunt, Anthony Iarino, Mark Hunter, Mike Weinberg, right? Those people are sort of in our space, and they've written lots of books. And their ideas are very similar. It's like what you said. You got to go pay the price. You got to go do the work.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to do the work, then you're not going to have the success. And it doesn't matter if it's sales or you're just trying to get better as a leader, or if you're an athlete. It's the parallels between athletes and sales is made all the time. But I think the difference is that athletes expect to be coached and expect to practice and expect to have to do the work, and salespeople don't. And that really isn't so much on the salespeople individually. It is, but at a corporate level, at least in this country, it isn't part of the culture. Like practicing and coaching and doing the work isn't part of it. We just expect people to go do things and get results. And
I think it's interesting where you mentioned a couple of things which everything you're saying is really resonate with. I think the first one is the comparison between sales and sport and athletes. And I think, as you probably know, I spend quite a lot of my free time running. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I was necessarily the best runner. And for the first time in my life this year, I ran a marathon. And I think the things that I learned around my own mindset, and it's the discipline and the rigor and the commitment of doing the training. And actually the training was probably harder when I think about it than actually doing the marathon. But it's blocking the time out to do the hard yards. And actually you learn so much about yourself when, I used to do a lot of my long runs with my running group, but if I couldn't make the day and time of those long runs, I would have to block time to go and do it on my own. And I remember one of my long runs, I had to run 19 miles on my own. And after 2 miles, I worked out that I hadn't charged my AirPods properly. So I was going to spend the next 17 miles not being able to listen to music or podcasts and have to talk to myself. And I don't know about you, Walter, but talking to yourself for 3.5 hours is not a good place to be.
No, it is not. Usually it is not a good spot to be, especially when you're like, for me, like I don't run, right? It's not something like unless somebody's chasing me, I'm not running. And I usually have a weapon, so there's no reason for me to chase or run. Yeah. But that is a really great story, because it's doing the work to be able to do the marathon, and you just cited a perfect example of that 19 miles without the 17 miles without the music and the podcast, is you're just in your own head and doing that. When you get that done, there's a certain sense of satisfaction. But that's harder than running with the competition and the people and the water coming at you. It's a whole different animal.
And I think, somebody once said to me, Walter, is success comes when you're doing the hard things that people don't see. It comes back. It just comes back to the discipline, blocking the time out. And somebody said to me, you've got to have, for sales, you've got to have that marathon mindset. And I think, training for something, in sport, or it could be somebody who's, who's a musician and they want to get better. They might be in an orchestra, or they might be the soloist. There are days, I think, when you do things where you're not as good at it, or you don't feel like doing it. And I think what I noticed was that there were days when my body didn't want to run.
Right.
But I knew that I had to go and do it. And I think it's the same in sales, and you and I know, because we run our respective businesses. I'm sure that you have this feeling. You wake up and you know that today you have to prospect, but you may not feel like doing it because there's probably other things that are a bit more attractive. Watching a few YouTube videos about sales, I'll ring my mate Walter up and have a conversation with him. And then, 2/3 of the day have gone and you're not prospected. Actually, you've got to start your day with those things, and it is the discipline. But the other thing which really resonated with me was it's about practice. And if you want to get better at something, you've got to practice, because it really shows when you don't practice something, when you don't practice a skill. And I think lots of salespeople have the skills, but the only time they practice is on their customers or their prospects.
It's the wrong time to be practicing.
Yeah. And actually, that is a really expensive way to practice. And for me, being able to practice discovery meetings with other specialists, other people in your team, I think you can have a lot of fun. And I would rather the wheels come off amongst a group of peers,
right,
than in front of a customer.
Well, so I'm working with some salespeople, and I'm thinking of a particular group, and this role playing, it's hard, and we're just working on a positioning statement for them, right? And they it's like hard, and I'm like, look, you're going to screw this up. You have to practice.
Yeah.
So would you rather practice here in front of these two other people and me, and get instant feedback that helps you get better, so that when you get on the phone tomorrow, you can go with a lot more confidence, right? So there's, in any group, there's somebody that leans into it, and there's somebody that leans back and doesn't think they need it. And the next day, one of the guys called me, and this to me is like the gratifying part. Called me up, hey, that thing that we were practicing? Like, yeah, I got a meeting. I called the prospect I've been trying to get. I got him on the phone, and I got the meeting. And they're like, that he was excited. He was, happy. Now he had some confidence, and he knew what we've been working on worked. And the other guy is struggling because he's not putting the time in, and he's probably going to lose his gig because he's not putting the effort in. So it's going to that uncomfortable spot. It's really that simple. Right?
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it, it's uncomfortable, but you got to go do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things here, and I'm thinking about a client that I've been working with for a few months, and the head of sales said, I feel really uncomfortable, doing my one-on-ones and my coaching with my team. And I said, well, who's your most challenging individual? And the head of sales said, this guy, Fred, said, well, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to role play being Fred. Oh, I don't want to practice. Well, you've just told me that you find it really difficult. So what do you think is going to happen when I play Fred? Well, you're going to be even worse than Fred. And I say, good. And actually what we did was we spent about 90 minutes role playing one-to-ones, and I would give feedback. 2 days later, the head of sales rang and said, hey, Pete, my one-on-ones are going fabulously. I was really well prepared for my one-to-ones this week. And how did it go with Fred? Oh, it was just fantastic. I've got Fred to agree to and commitments, and usually we're just pushing back and being obnoxious. So actually we're going to start doing role plays about how to do calls. So I think when somebody sees the impact, and I think role plays and practice, it's about the consistency of it. And I'm going to come back to, I'm going to connect the dots here with sports and conditioning. So I've got a physio stroke strength conditioner, and what he says is that it's not about when I attend the sessions. What he says is, in between sessions, you have to go and practice these exercises. And when you come back to see me each week, I'll be able to tell whether you've practiced. And I think it's the same in sales. If you don't practice, it shows up so much in the way you do discovery meetings, the way you do presentations. You're leaving things to chance.
It's like being on stage, right? You don't jump up on stage and you're going to deliver a keynote, or you're going to deliver a speech for a group without having put some effort into writing it, owning it, practicing it, getting the right delivery, the right tone, the right pacing, and all of that. And there's no difference between any of that in sales, right? It's obvious if somebody can't execute a simple positioning statement, or like how we start a phone call, or a certain technique. And it's that little thing that they just need, and you never know what it is until you start poking around in there. as a coach to help them see that one thing. And Curlin told me this a couple years ago. That coaching session that we provide to the salesperson, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes or 30 minutes of like constant epiphanies. They just need that one thing that turns the light on for them, that one thing that helps them say, oh, that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
They get that one thing, right? And we can tell by paying attention and listening to them, looking at their body language, like they sort of like their face brightens up and they get it. And some of them don't, some of them do, some of them it takes longer. That's fine if they keep putting in the effort. But the best of the best, right? You know, soccer players or football players in Europe, those guys practice on a consistent basis. I read Tim Grover's book that he coached Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. You know, they had talent, yeah, but what did he work with them on? Focus,
mindset, yeah,
and being focused on the thing that they needed to do to just get a little bit better and to be better than the competition.
Well,
and I contend in sales, it's much easier for us to be a step above than everybody else if we just practice.
It's interesting you mentioned about you mentioned about talent. So I think as you're aware, I'm from a town in North England called Wigan, so I'm a big rugby league fan. I know quite a lot of the coaches, and I know some of the players. And
hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview.
A couple of years ago, we had Jamie Peacock, who used to play for Great Britain, and Lee Ryan was introduced to work with some of our team, and it was all about mindset. One of his messages that really resonates with me is that, you know, you can have talent, but you've got to consistently apply that talent. And if you don't have the mindset to apply that talent, you're actually not going to succeed. And one of the things that he talks about, you know, is his journey to success. And, you know, he didn't, you know, a lot of the players that make it through into successful sports teams, that they'll have gone on a journey where, you know, they'll have been picked out to the age of 8 to 10 to join the academy sides and the feeder clubs. And he wasn't. And he got picked to join a team called Bradford Bulls, who were in the Super League at the time. And he talks about how on Christmas Day, he's, you know, it was a bit like the imposter syndrome. He didn't feel that he was worthy. So he decided he was going to do something which no other Super League player was going to do. He went for a 10-kilometer run when it was freezing to death. And he said, you've got to do the things that others aren't prepared to do if you haven't got the same level of talent. But talent, you know, he said, it's about discipline and it's about commitment. And I think this is things that people are not prepared to do because they think they've got the talent. And it's interesting, you know, before we came on, you were talking about things that where you've succeeded and you haven't. And I often, when I'm, you know, doing public speaking, I will talk about the fact that I'm not the best salesperson, and people, CEOs will look at me and think, I've come to listen to a sales expert. And I'll say, you know, how many of you got people like this in your business, in your sales team? They've got the gift of the gab, you know, they can hold court at the bar, but they don't really deliver. And, you know, lots of hands go up. And I say, well, I wonder how many people have got people like me that are a bit more introverted, but we're persistent and we follow process. But you're probably not, you know, you may not want to go for dinner with me, but you'll go for dinner with all these people who are really good at telling jokes and holding court. You know, what is it you want?
Right.
What's important in the role? By personality, or just because somebody's extroverted doesn't. And I hear this a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it. You know, we talk about OMG. Yeah, but I've got an award-winning personality. My customers love me. And I'm thinking, great, because I'm going to set up in competition against you, because I'm going to go and deliver more value to your customers. You know, I'm not here to, I'm here to solve my prospects' problems. I'm not here to be a comedian.
Well, there's a line, right? And we can talk about relationships. Relationships are important when we're developing some rapport, and
Yeah,
we're looking to build trust. But we don't build trust to the level that needs to be until we really start delivering value and honor what we've said we were going to do,
exactly.
and show that commitment. And we're not. There are a lot of salespeople out there, and a lot of business owners who think that they need to be friends, quote unquote, friends with their customers. And I think that might happen one day, maybe. But what's important is that we're likable, that we can interact with folks and not be a complete dud. But
Yeah,
it's not about being their friend. It's about delivering on what we're doing, and that's how you're going to develop that trust. And I also think the relationship piece can get you to the table, but it's not going to close the business, right? Especially if there's some sort of challenge going on in the economy, or you got to try to differentiate when competition comes along. So that idea, I think, is important, because you're more introverted than a lot of folks. I'm an introvert. I prefer not to be engaged with a bunch of people,
yeah,
and I learned that I have to I have to turn it on and turn it off, and
yeah,
it's exhausting, frankly, for me to do
yeah.
that. But it's my job. I have to do it, and but you have to practice it. And you have to get to that place, and I have to go to that uncomfortable spot, like we've been talking about. It's doing the work.
And I think you've got to get uncomfortable with yourself. And it's interesting you talk about relationships, and I hear salespeople say, I've got great relationships. I say, well, how do you define that? Let's break it down. Oh, well, Walter's my best client, and he's a great bloke. We're going to have a few cigars together. We play golf, and then when you really break it down, and you say, so I'm just interested to know, how long have you known Walter in his business? Oh, 15 years. So I'd
And
just like to understand how much you've increased the revenue by. Well, it's in decline then. So if it's in decline, why? If you've got such a good relationship, well, we're friends. I don't really like to challenge him, because if I do challenge him, it's going to make me feel uncomfortable. And I think this, you've really hit on something here. This is the crux of it. And you mentioned Anthony Reno before. I think I often say to prospects, listen, relationship selling is dead. And they go, no, it's all about relationships. I said, yes, like you said, the relationship will get you to the table. However, it's what do you really mean by relationship? When I say relationship selling is dead, what I mean is those cozy relationships that people have where they're not talking about business, they're not creating value, they don't understand their own value proposition, because somewhere down the road, your competition is, they're sharpening their saw, they're getting themselves to the right toolkit, and they're ringing up your existing clients and saying, hey, Walter, we're working with a lot of manufacturing businesses like yours, where we're helping them reduce costs and become more efficient. Is that something that's keeping you awake at night, Walter?
of course
Well,
it
now
is.
you come to say, it is. And actually, the salesperson who's got the great relationship with you has just been, milking the relationship, but hasn't been presenting any value. And suddenly, when somebody better shows up to create some value, you're interested.
Yeah. It's a real problem that salespeople it's a crutch. They rely on it, and they don't
Yeah,
understand what it really means to add value, and what it means to have some skepticism. And when I challenge salespeople to, like, you need to dig into that. You need to,
yeah,
like, understand, like, you say you want that, but and you've tried a couple of things over the last 2 years, but you're still in the same boat. So I got to ask, like, why now? What's
yeah,
changed that is going to make you do something different? Because that's what's going to have to happen. You're going to have to do something different, Mr. CEO, or
yeah,
Mr. Senior Sales Leader. And if you're not willing to do something different, like, we're just twiddling our thumbs here. And I think that's our job as salespeople when we're doing discovery. Again, another message that Curlin gave us, like, you were probably in the room when he was on stage a couple years ago, and he said, if you don't close the business, it's probably because you did a shitty job of discovery, as a quote.
Yeah.
And, it's our fault. And he's
Yeah.
not wrong. If it is a closable opportunity, if they have a real problem, it's our responsibility. And if we have this relationship, it has to be set over here to go like, now we got to deal with this problem. And we really, and you can leverage that relationship, because I need to take my friend hat off here and put on my consultant hat and tell you the truth. And if you can't do that, you're not adding value.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things there. I often say, when I don't get a deal, I'm responsible. I didn't follow something in the process, or I was complacent, or I didn't find out the decision makers, and I didn't find out that actually it's Walter, the grumpy CFO, who never signed anything off like this. I didn't engage with Walter much earlier on. So when I asked the two owners where we're going to proceed, and they said, no, Walter's blocked it. Who's Walter?
Right. When you're surprised, crap, I didn't do a clear picture of who else is engaged with this decision process.
And you got to, but I think here, this is something that, is one of my pet hates with sales teams, and I think for, CEOs who are listening, this is really, really important, and you coming back to sports and professional performance, the gentleman I referred to before, Jamie Peacock, he talks about in his career how he had to reinvent himself 4 or 5 times. So he was a forward, and he said, initially when he started playing professional rugby league, it was all about the number of yards he made, the biff factor. But he said, I had to pivot several times in my career and learn how to offload the ball to get better, and I had to learn how to pass the ball. And he said, what makes you successful in 2023 won't make you successful in 2024. So I think as salespeople, if your salespeople are not wanting to change, they're going to get left behind. And if they're not committed to learning and trying something new, which may make them feel uncomfortable, then your business is going to get left behind. And this is what I often leave, CEOs with a thought. I often say, so do you watch professional sports? And a lot of people do. Or, do you watch, professional concerts and things like that? So how do you feel when your team that you support and follow doesn't perform? They're not very good. And, what sort of emotions come up? Well, I feel frustrated because I feel they're not committed and they're not trying. And they said, you'll often hear things like, they don't follow a game plan.
Right.
And you say, well, do you have a game plan for sales? What do you mean? Well, do you have a sales playbook, for example, that people follow consistently? And so all these things begin to, I think, unravel for organizations, because, they can't sort of corral their salespeople into following a process because they think it's down to people's personality. I hired a few weeks ago a salesperson said, well, you don't understand, Pete, because I sell on my winning personality. Which is a great expression. I said, well, we need to bottle that and sell it. He said, yeah, well, if we bottle it, everybody else will be doing it. I said, yeah, that makes it scalable. And I think success in sport, or success in like the performing arts, comes down to people following a process consistently. We started the conversation with like the mutual connection of Objective Management Group, OMG, but that's all about data. That's all about using data and analytics to help you understand how to get better. And I don't know any other profession, and I think this is the same in the US, that doesn't have continued professional development as a mandatory thing. I know lots of lawyers and accountants, they have to go through so many hours of continued professional development each year to keep their license.
Right. Continuing education, we call it here.
Yeah, but salespeople seem to think they're above that.
But and I go back to what I said earlier, that their mindset of being personal development isn't priority, right? It's one of the
Yeah.
questions that we look at when we're hiring somebody. Like, what do you do to improve your skills? What have you done lately to improve your skills?
Yeah.
But so they should have that without a doubt, and that's what we're looking for. But the responsibility of that development is driven by some other organizational level, right? So if you're a
Yeah.
CPA, you have to have a certain number of credits to maintain your license. If you're a lawyer, right? All of those have certification processes. And
Yeah.
you're saying sales doesn't. Well, because there's not a sales organization that manages all salespeople or accreditation. So then it falls to the business owner, the CEO, the board of directors, whatever's appropriate. And it's like, what are we doing, right? And they don't understand that that's their responsibility to get those people to take this step up. They are not athletes, and they haven't been put into that culture. So if your culture isn't set up to be like, we're always trying to get better, we're always
Yeah.
looking at this room is going to be a safe place for us to try new things and do things, then they're not doing their job. And I think that is probably hard for some CEOs and business owners to realize and to accept. But I would say that, if not them, then who? If we
Yeah.
rely on the individual salesperson, you're going to be disappointed, right? There's some folks that I always tried to figure out why I lost a deal, or went to somebody. It's like, what happened here, and how do I get better at it? And I would take courses and do things, but I don't think I was the norm. I think I was the exception. And so they have the opportunities with people like you and people like us and the other OMG partners that there is support to provide them some structure and to help get that coaching in place.
Yeah. Do you know, one thing that really surprises me with lots of salespeople is how they won't even invest a minimal amount of money in resources to support their development. So I know, like you, Walter, I'm an avid reader, listener of podcasts, listen to audiobooks. And, I was talking to a salesperson a few weeks ago, and they said, so you want me to spend $10 a month on Audible so I can download a book to listen to whilst I'm in the car? I'm not doing that. And I'm thinking, but this is a salesperson with a high basic salary, potential for earning a lot of money, and they're not even prepared to spend, say, $10 a month on their own development.
But they'll go to the coffee shop and spend $7 on a stupid coffee.
You're exactly right. Yeah. So I think that's where you get the disconnect, because they want to be treated as professionals, but they're not willing to pay the price.
Not willing to be a professional because it takes effort and uncomfortableness. So I think if a CEO or senior sales leader walks away from listening to this conversation and doesn't understand that there's that need to change the culture and that need to drive that behavior change, and if they don't have the right people, then they might have to change those people over time. But they have to step up and start to encourage that behavior. So you said a bunch of things here that I think are of value. What's the best way for a CEO who's someplace in Britain or in Europe that I need to talk to Pete. I want to get a little bit more info. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, Pete?
So the best way to contact me would be to type into LinkedIn Pete Evans, Ventas Sales, and connect with me on LinkedIn. And more than happy to have a call with you for 30, 45 minutes and just share with some insights about what's really happening in the world of sales, or talk about some of the challenges. So yeah, LinkedIn's the best way to contact me.
All right, so we'll have that in the show notes for people, and I would encourage you. I've known Pete a few years, and we've gone through. We've gone through a few different things together.
Certainly have, Walter. Yes,
and I think we've all learned. One of the things that we could talk about some other time is how we've screwed something up, and it really turned into a benefit for us and success later. And I think that's a conversation for another for another day. But I think we could load up an afternoon with that. We could get to 17.
Well, maybe when I interview you on my podcast, we can talk about some of the things, some of the mistakes we've made, and the lessons that we've learned.
The hard lessons we've learned, right? There's
definitely.
A wonderful quote from Oscar Wilde, and we'll land it here. There's a wonderful quote from Oscar Wilde that says, "Experience is the name I give to my mistakes."
Yeah,
and I've always taken that as I have a corollary. I'm a very experienced guy because I've made more mistakes than most people. Because I just think, if we're not trying something and we're not out there, then they're not really living. So Pete, as always, pleasure. Thank you. All right, appreciate it. I love sharing secrets when I figure them out. That's why I created this program called Sales Hiring Secrets. Early in my sales management career, I was terrible at hiring salespeople. They failed more often than not. Then I discovered the secret that you can't hire salespeople the same way you hire everyone else. That's why everyone fails. In Sales Hiring Secrets, I'm going to teach you all of the secrets to understanding what you really need your salesperson to do, how to attract an ideal candidate with a unique job posting. I'll teach you how to save time and money by only interviewing candidates that are a good fit. I'll share the secrets to an interviewing process that ensures success. And the one big secret that everybody gets wrong is how to onboard a good salesperson so they ramp up quickly and stick around. I'm doing the Sales Hiring Secrets program on a monthly basis. You can click the link below to figure out when the next Sales Hiring Secrets program is scheduled, and you can sign up. Click the link below, and you get all the details. And it's designed for you to bring your entire team so you can get everybody up to speed quickly. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.